Welcome to Professor Russell Esposito's channel on information security. This video is just one of many video modules that are part of Professor Esposito's course on the subject. Video modules for his entire information security course are located on this channel. So remember to hit the like button as well as subscribe if you enjoy the video. Thank you for watching.
Cloud security considerations. Before we really discuss security, let's do a quick review of the different flavors of cloud utilization. So this chart is a pretty standard chart. There are many places you could find this kind of organization. And the blue is the things you manage, right? So you have on-premises. On-premises, you own your own equipment. It's in your own data center. You own everything. You have all accountability for hardware, software, operations, runtime, everything. Then there's the three flavors of the cloud: infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. Now, software as a service is essentially something like, Yahoo email or Gmail, Google Gmail, something like where you're just really using the application. You're not responsible for anything else. You're inputting the data. You may have a few options in terms of some options in terms of configuration, how you want the email system to display for you, but very minimal. So really, it's a software as a service. You really do nothing but use the system and put data into it. So those are the two extremes. On premises, you own all the equipment, you own everything about the software, hardware, runtime, operations, all the rest of that. Software as a service is the other extreme on the right-hand side. That's where the vendor provides everything, you provide data. So let's talk about infrastructure as a service. This is close to on-prem in the sense that you're only outsourcing to the vendor, whether it's Amazon, AWS, or Microsoft Azure or IBM. You're outsourcing the hardware. So that's the orange here. The vendor manages the orange from the bottom half. It looks like virtualization down. You're responsible for the operating system and infrastructure as a service, the second column, and up. Everything from the operating system up. So I should say operating system up, not infrastructure. You're responsible for that. They're responsible for the hardware. Virtualization ends the VM machines, virtual machines in the orange. That's the end of their responsibility. And then platform as a service, you're only responsible for the application and the data. So consider something like you're running your own application in the cloud that you coded, you're providing the data, that's platform as a service. Or you could use, let's say, the machine learning platform of Microsoft or AWS, Amazon, using their machine learning platform, but it's low code, maybe some coding as well. You're creating really the application, even though it's in that platform. It's your data model, it's your machine learning model. You're really managing that. So those are sort of the three flavors. Now you could have an organization that uses all three of these. You could have some systems on premises and some systems infrastructure as a service, some platform as a service, etc. So it's not uncommon to use all of these as a hybrid approach to using your on-premises data center. It's not uncommon to see that. But this is sort of the platform, and we're going to look next at a slide that pretty much mirrors this, but reflects security responsibilities. What does the vendor own, and what do you own? What does the customer own? And it's close in terms of the same sort of layout of blue versus orange. So let's look at the next slide. Okay, Microsoft provided this slide, so this is their view, and it's pretty much, I think, accurate in terms of how you would split up sharing responsibility for security. Now, first take notice of this chart because they reversed the sequence here. To the left, they have software as a service, and to the right, they have on-premises. But if you look at the blue is the customer's responsibility, and the gray is Microsoft or any vendor, essentially. So on-premises, it's all blue. It's all the customer's responsibility, obviously. Then the next one over to the left of on-premises is infrastructure as a service. And everything that's blue is operating system up. And that's comparable to what we saw in the previous slide, right? As far as managing it. You're managing it and you're responsible for the security from the operating system up. Patching the OS, making sure it's the right version, making sure there are hot fixes. The customer is responsible for that. and the operator, the vendor, in this case Microsoft, is responsible for those three on the bottom: the network, the physical host, the network, the data center. Move one over to the left again, and now you have platform as a service, and these sort of slashed triangles indicate that there's shared responsibility. So for platform as a service, the customer is responsible for the information, the data, the devices attaching to it, the accounts, the identities, obviously. And then there's some shared responsibility for identity management, the application, and the network controls. And that's, probably makes sense because the platform is being provided by the vendor, and you're really either providing an application or using, something that they provided their platform, like a machine learning platform. I think is a good example where they provide sort of this core, infrastructure, a software infrastructure, software platform to work on and build your own data models, your machine learning models, really create the application yourself. So there's going to be some shared responsibility for those levels. And then software as a service all the way to the left, obviously you're responsible for the data and your account management. And there's some identity management responsibility because they are providing, maybe a single sign-on, that kind of approach where there's some interaction with a vendor for identity management. So you can see this pretty much parallels the previous slide on the different flavors of cloud computing. And I hope this helps clarify. And that we have a few other slides on some more details about security in the cloud. This slide covers a few more considerations for cloud security. So the first is access control. So obviously you need access control whether you're in the cloud or whether you're in your on premises in your own data center, but you have to be sort of more acutely aware of the fact that you have data in the cloud and there's a potential that, it's just another threat vector or another attack vector that a hacker could potentially use. So limit access to sensitive data, obviously, and be as granular as you could be in terms of reading and writing, so that if you want individuals just to be able to read versus read and write, and other actions have to be granularly controlled. Again, I'm not saying this isn't a discipline that can be ignored if you're not in the cloud. It can't be, but you just have to be a little bit more acutely aware and more sensitive to the fact that you have data, and maybe limit your, really severely limit very sensitive data. Either don't put it in the cloud or ensure that you really have tight control. You can control a SQL database in the cloud right down to the column, right? You could have block control in terms of who could access a column in a SQL database. So you may not necessarily do that on premises, but in the cloud you might want to subscribe to that sort of security. And the next one is backups. You're in AWS, you're in Microsoft, IBM, you may feel it's fault tolerant. This is a huge vendor. Maybe you get a little lax with your backups. That would be a mistake, because if you do have a ransomware attack and you have your files that are encrypted now, you need your backups and you need frequent backups to get current data. So you have to ensure that you're still doing backups with the same rapidity and same frequency that you've done on premises. And the next thing is misconfiguration. This is a big problem. This is just one McAfee survey of how many misconfigurations there are. Now there's one comment here that 1 out of 20 AWS S3 buckets, an S3 bucket is basically just a storage container, have world read permissions. That's astonishing if that's true. Even if it's 1 out of 100, it would be kind of shocking. But I can tell you misconfigurations. If you look at some of IBM's data in X-Force, it's very common that security breaches occur because of misconfigurations. Human error with firewalls or routers. There's something that's misconfigured in the network infrastructure that allows for some vulnerability, some access for a bad actor to get into your system. So you have to be, again, acutely aware. Now that you have things in the cloud further exposed to the world, you need to be very, very careful about configuring and making changes to your firewall or any of your network devices. And then finally, compliance. So there's lots of regulatory bodies in every industry, whether it's the healthcare industry or banking, finance, and insurance industries. And compliance is a big deal today in terms of following regulations like HIPAA, the Health Insurance Portability Act, or Graham-Leach-Bliley or Sarbanes-Oxley for publicly traded companies. So you just have to include all your activity in the cloud as part of your compliance review, as part of any control, all the controls that your staff may be following to stay compliant with these regulations. You know, they have to make sure they're applying those controls on premises and as well in the cloud with any activity in the cloud. And if you have any audit preparations, whatever you're doing now on premises, obviously you need to do the same for all of your processing in the cloud. Those activities need to be, you know, prepped for audits as well. So it's just another area that has to be in the fold of compliance. It's also, you know, as you can see from this entire slide, it's another threat vector. It's just another opportunity, another place that a potential bad actor or a hacker could have some access to your data or your systems. This concludes the Cloud Security Responsibilities module.